The morning sun peeked through the blinds of the break room at the Metro Police Department, casting long stripes of light across the worn table. Officer Lisa Nguyen sipped her coffee, watching the steam curl into the air as she flipped through the day's assignment sheet. 3 years on the force had taught her the value of these quiet moments before shift change. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and glanced at the clock. 5 minutes until roll call. The door swung open, and the peaceful moment shattered as Officer Robert Walsh strode in, already wearing his trademark scowl. He didn't acknowledge Lisa as he poured himself coffee, spilling some on the counter and not bothering to wipe it up. "Morning, Walsh," Lisa said, more out of habit than expectation of a friendly response. Walsh grunted something that might have been a greeting. He was a 15-year veteran of the department, and he made sure everyone knew it. His uniform was always pressed to perfection, his boots polished to a mirror shine. If only his attitude matched his appearance. "Heard you're riding with me tonight," he said finally, not making eye contact. "Captain's orders." Lisa felt her stomach tighten. Working with Walsh was never easy. The man had a reputation throughout the department. His personnel file bulged, with civilian complaints mostly from people of color in the neighborhoods he patrolled. Somehow he'd always managed to avoid serious consequences. Some said it was because he had friends in high places. Others whispered it was because the old guard protected their own. Looking forward to it, Lisa lied, gathering her things. She'd learned that confrontation with Walsh never ended well. The briefing room was already filling up when they arrived. Officers clustered in their usual groups, veterans with veterans, rookies with rookies. Lisa noticed how the department had naturally segregated itself not just by experience but often by race and gender too. The newer officers were a more diverse group, reflecting the changing face of the city they served. The old-timers like Walsh were predominantly white men who'd joined the force in a different era. Captain Torres entered, and the room fell silent. She was relatively new to the position, promoted after the previous captain retired amid accusations of mishandling discrimination complaints. Torres had promised changes, transparency, and accountability. Naturally, this made her popular with some officers and deeply unpopular with others. "Good evening, everyone," Torres began, her voice firm but fair. "Before we get to assignments, I want to address something. We've had 3 excessive force complaints in the past month, all from the same neighborhood. This is unacceptable, Lisa." Noticed Walsh shift in his seat, crossing his arms defensively. One of those complaints had his name on it. "Starting next week, we're implementing additional training on de-escalation techniques and community-oriented policing," Torres continued. "Attendance is mandatory for all officers." A low grumble rippled through the room. Walsh leaned over to Officer Peterson sitting beside him. "More woke nonsense," he muttered, just loud enough for Lisa to hear from her seat behind him. "When I started, we knew how to keep order. Now they want us to hold hands and sing songs." Peterson chuckled, but Lisa saw a few other officers shoot disapproving glances their way. The department was changing, however slowly and painfully. After assignments were handed out, Lisa headed to the locker room to gear up for patrol. Officer Tamika Johnson was already there, checking her equipment with practiced efficiency. "Heard you got partnered with Walsh tonight," Tamika said, fastening her vest. "Stay safe out there." "That bad, huh?" Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. Tamika closed her locker with a metallic clang. "Let's just say he made some comments when we worked together last month that would have gotten him fired in any other workplace. I filed a report, but—" She shrugged, the gesture conveying volumes about the department's handling of internal complaints. "Did anything come of it?" Lisa asked. "A note in his file. A stern talking to. The usual nothing." Tamika checked her radio. "Just watch yourself. The man's got issues with anyone who doesn't look like him or think like him." Lisa nodded, appreciating the warning, though it only confirmed what she already suspected. She'd encountered Walsh's prejudices before. Subtle comments about her heritage, dismissive remarks about her capabilities. He was smart enough to stay just on the right side of what the department could officially discipline, but his attitudes were clear to anyone paying attention. Out in the parking lot, Walsh was already in the driver's seat of their patrol car, engine running. Lisa climbed into the passenger side, the familiar smell of artificial pine air freshener mingling with the lingering scent of fast food. "Took you long enough," Walsh said, pulling out of the lot without waiting for her to fully close her door. "We've got the East Side tonight." The East Side was one of the more diverse areas of the city, home to vibrant communities of immigrants, working-class families, and young professionals drawn by more affordable rents. It was also an area that had historically experienced tense relations with police. "I was thinking we could stop by the community center," Lisa suggested as they drove. "They're having that youth basketball program tonight. Good chance to build some positive connections," Walsh snorted. "We're not social workers, Nguyen. We're here to enforce the law, not play games with kids." "Community relations is part of our job," Lisa persisted. "Captain Torres specifically mentioned." "Torres has been here, 6 months?" Walsh cut her off. "I've been patrolling these streets since before she was out of the academy. Trust me, these people only respect one thing, and it's not us showing up to watch basketball." Lisa bit back her response. The casual way he said, "these people," made her skin crawl, but she knew from experience that challenging him directly would only make the next 8 hours unbearable. Instead, she made a mental note to stop by the community center herself later in the week. The radio crackled with their first call, a shoplifting report at a convenience store. As Walsh flipped on the siren and accelerated, Lisa prepared herself for how he might handle the situation. She'd seen him escalate minor incidents before, particularly with suspects of color. The store owner, a middle-aged man with a heavy accent, was waiting for them outside. He explained that a teenager had attempted to steal several items, but had run off when confronted. He described the boy as black, around 16, wearing a blue hoodie. "See what I mean?" Walsh muttered as they got back in the car to search the area. "Always the same story in this neighborhood." "Shoplifting happens everywhere," Lisa pointed out. "The rates in the mall on the west side are actually higher." Walsh ignored her, scanning the streets as they drove slowly through the area. A few blocks away, they spotted a young black teenager in a navy hoodie walking along the sidewalk. "That's our guy," Walsh said, immediately pulling over. "We don't know that," Lisa objected. "The description could match dozens of kids around here." But Walsh was already out of the car, hand resting on his holster as he called out to the boy, "Hey, you, stop right there." The teenager turned, confusion, and then fear crossing his face as he saw the police car. Lisa quickly got out and moved to position herself between Walsh and the boy, trying to de-escalate the situation. "Hi there," she said calmly. "We're just looking to ask a few questions. You're not in trouble." The boy, who couldn't have been more than 15, held up his hands instinctively. "I didn't do anything, officer." Walsh pushed forward. "Where were you just now? Coming from the Quick Mart?" "No, sir, I'm coming from my cousin's house. I'm heading home." "Empty your pockets," Walsh demanded. Lisa intervened. "Officer Walsh, we don't have reasonable suspicion to search him." She turned to the teenager. "What's your name?" "David Williams, ma'am." "Do you have ID, David?" The boy carefully reached for his wallet, movements deliberately slow as Walsh watched him like a hawk. He produced a school ID card that confirmed his identity and that he was, in fact, only 14. After checking his information and finding no warrants or issues, they had no choice but to let him go. Back in the car, Walsh was fuming. "You undermined me in front of a suspect," he said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "He wasn't a suspect," Lisa replied firmly. "He was a kid walking home who happened to be wearing blue. We had no grounds to search him." "This is exactly what's wrong with the new generation of cops," Walsh said, his voice rising. "So worried about following every little procedure that the real criminals walk free. When I started, we knew how to keep people in line. By harassing innocent teenagers?" The words were out before Lisa could stop them. The car filled with tense silence. For the rest of the shift, Walsh barely spoke to her except when absolutely necessary. He deliberately took them to calls in the roughest parts of the district, watching her carefully as if hoping she'd make a mistake or show fear. When they returned to the station at the end of their shift, Lisa was exhausted, not from the work itself, but from the constant tension of navigating Walsh's hostility and prejudice. As she filled out her paperwork, Captain Torres stopped by her desk. "How was patrol with Walsh?" she asked quietly. Lisa considered her response carefully. She wanted to report his behavior, but she'd seen how little had come from previous complaints. Would speaking up make any difference, or would it just make her a target? "Challenging," she said finally. "We have different approaches to policing." Torres studied her face. "Different approaches are fine. Disrespect and discrimination aren't. My door is always open, Officer Nguyen." As Torres walked away, Lisa noticed Walsh watching their interaction from across the room, his eyes cold. She finished her paperwork quickly and headed out, suddenly very aware that the department wasn't just divided between old and new ways of policing. It was at a breaking point. And somehow she knew that she and Walsh were on a collision course that would force these long-simmering tensions into the open. What she couldn't know yet was just how dangerous that collision would be. 3 days after their tense first patrol, together Lisa found herself assigned to work with Officer Walsh again. The evening sky had darkened early, heavy clouds threatening rain as they drove through the East Side neighborhood in silence. The radio had been quiet for most of their shift, which only made the atmosphere in the patrol car more uncomfortable. Lisa checked her watch, just past 10 p.m., 4 more hours to go. She glanced at Walsh, who was staring straight ahead, jaw clenched. He'd barely spoken 10 words to her all night, which was fine by her. After their last shift together, she'd written up a detailed account of his behavior and submitted it to Captain Torres. Nothing official had come of it yet, but word got around fast in the department. Walsh knew she'd reported him. The radio crackled to life. "Unit 27, we've got a domestic disturbance call at 1423 Maple Street, apartment 4B. Neighbor reports shouting and possible physical altercation." Lisa responded while Walsh made a sharp U-turn, flipping on the lights but not the siren. Domestic. Calls were always unpredictable, sometimes just arguments that had gotten out of hand, sometimes genuinely dangerous situations. Either way, they required careful handling. "Let me take the lead on this one," Lisa said as they neared the address. "I've had special training in domestic response." Walsh snorted. "Right. Because what these situations need is a soft touch." "Actually, yes," Lisa replied, keeping her voice even. "De-escalation works better than confrontation. The goal is to calm things down, not make them worse. We'll see," was all Walsh said as he pulled up to the curb. The apartment building was a modest 2-story structure with exterior walkways. As they climbed the stairs to the second floor, they could hear raised voices coming from 4B. A woman was crying, a man shouting. The sound of something breaking made them both quicken their pace. A neighbor peeked out from apartment 4A, an elderly black woman with concern etched on her face. "Thank goodness you're here," she said quietly. "They've been at it for almost an hour. I'm worried about Tanisha and her little boy." "We'll handle it, ma'am," Lisa assured her. "Please stay inside for your safety." The woman nodded and closed her door, though Lisa noticed she left it slightly ajar, keeping watch. Outside apartment 4B, Lisa positioned herself in front of the door with Walsh slightly behind her. She knocked firmly. "Police officers, we need you to open the door." The shouting inside immediately stopped. After a moment of silence, footsteps approached, and the door opened a crack. A woman's face appeared, early 30s with a darkening bruise visible on her cheekbone. "We don't need any police," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Everything's fine." "Ma'am, we received a call about a disturbance," Lisa said gently. "I'm Officer Nguyen, this is Officer Walsh. Could we come in and talk for a few minutes?" The woman hesitated, glancing back into the apartment. "It was just an argument. We're good now." A man's voice called from inside. "Who is it, Tanisha?" "It's the police," she replied, then turned back to the officers. "Really, we don't need—" Walsh suddenly pushed forward, shouldering the door wider. "Sir, step out where we can see you. Now." Lisa shot him a warning look, but the damage was done. The confrontational tone immediately changed the dynamic. The man inside the apartment appeared behind Tanisha, tall, muscular, with an expression that shifted quickly from anger to wariness at the sight of the officers. "We don't need police here," he said. "This is private." "Sir, we need to make sure everyone is safe," Lisa explained, trying to recover the situation. "Could we come in and talk for a few minutes?" The man seemed about to refuse when a small voice called out, "Mommy?" A young boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old, peeked around the corner from what appeared to be a hallway leading to bedrooms. Tanisha's demeanor changed instantly. "Go back to your room, honey. Mommy's talking to some people." The little boy disappeared and Tanisha's shoulders slumped. "Fine, you can come in." The apartment was modest but neat, though a broken lamp on the floor and scattered papers suggested the recent argument had become physical. Lisa introduced herself properly to both adults, Tanisha Jones and her boyfriend Andre Wilson. "Is your son the only other person here?" Lisa asked. Tanisha nodded. "Kevin's supposed to be asleep. Would you mind if I check on him?" Lisa asked, "just to make sure he's okay." While Tanisha led Lisa down the hallway, Walsh stayed in the living room with Andre, who remained standing with his arms crossed defensively. In the small bedroom, Kevin was sitting on his bed clutching a stuffed dinosaur. He looked up with wide eyes as Lisa entered with his mother. "Hey there," Lisa said, kneeling to his level. "My name's Lisa. I'm a police officer. That's a cool dinosaur you've got." The boy nodded shyly. "His name is Rex." "That's a perfect name," Lisa smiled. She turned to Tanisha. "Could we talk privately for a moment?" Once they were in the hallway, Lisa spoke softly. "Are you and Kevin safe here tonight? Has Andre hurt you before?" Tanisha touched the bruise on her face unconsciously. "It's not usually like this. He's under a lot of pressure at work and—" "That's not an excuse for hurting you," Lisa said gently. "There are resources that can help. Places you and Kevin can go tonight if you don't feel safe." "We don't need that," Tanisha insisted, though her eyes betrayed uncertainty. "He's never hit me before. He just grabbed my arm and I pulled away and fell against the counter. It was an accident." Before Lisa could respond, raised voices from the living room drew their attention. They hurried back to find Walsh and Andre face to face, tension radiating between them. "Don't like your attitude," Walsh was saying, his hand resting near his holster. "You need to sit down and calm down." "This is my home," Andre replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You can't come in here and talk to me like I'm a criminal." "You put your hands on a woman," Walsh said. "That makes you a criminal in my book." "You don't know what happened." Lisa stepped between them. "Everyone needs to take a breath. Mr. Wilson, please sit on the couch." "Officer Walsh, a word?" She pulled Walsh aside, keeping her voice low. "What are you doing? We're supposed to de-escalate, not provoke." "I'm handling it," Walsh hissed. "That guy's got an attitude problem. Probably think he can push women around without consequences." "You're making assumptions," Lisa said firmly. "Let me handle this my way. If we can separate them for the night and get her resources—" "Your way," Walsh scoffed. "Your way is why these neighborhoods stay dangerous. These people need to understand there are consequences." The coded racism in these people wasn't lost on Lisa, or on Tanisha and Andre, who could clearly hear despite Walsh's lowered voice. Andre stood up from the couch, his expression darkening. "What do you mean by these people, officer?" asked. Walsh turned, his hand now resting more obviously on his holster. "Sit down. I didn't give you permission to stand." "This is my home," Andre repeated, standing his ground but not moving closer. "You don't get to come in here with that racist attitude." The word racist hit Walsh like a physical blow, his face flushed red. "You want to see what happens to people who make false accusations against police officers?" Lisa stepped between them again. "That's enough. Walsh, step outside, now." Instead of complying, Walsh moved closer to Andre, entering his personal space. "You think you can disrespect an officer in your own home? The law applies everywhere, friend." Andre held his hands up, palms forward. "I'm not your friend, and I'm not doing anything wrong." Lisa put her hand on Walsh's arm. "Officer Walsh, we need to—" In one swift motion, Walsh shoved Lisa's hand away and drew his weapon, pointing it directly at her face. "Back off. I'm handling this." The room froze. Lisa stood perfectly still, her eyes locked on the barrel of Walsh's gun, her heart hammering in her chest. Behind Walsh, she could see Tanisha pulling Kevin back into the hallway, the little boy's eyes wide with terror. "Put the gun down, Walsh," Lisa said, her voice remarkably steady despite the fear coursing through her. "You're pointing your weapon at a fellow officer." Walsh's eyes were wild, unfocused. For a terrifying moment, Lisa wasn't sure if he even recognized her. "You always undermine me," he spat, "always taking their side against your own." "There are no sides here," Lisa said carefully. "We're all on the same side. Put the gun down, and we can talk about this." From the corner of her eye, Lisa could see Andre slowly reaching for his phone on the coffee table. Walsh didn't notice, his attention fixed entirely on Lisa. "You need to learn your place," Walsh continued, his voice shaking with rage. "You and all these people who don't respect authority. You think because Torres has your back, you can push me around? I've given 15 years to this department." Lisa kept her hands visible, making no sudden movements. "This isn't about me or Torres or the department. This is about you pointing a weapon at another officer. Think about what you're doing, Walsh. This isn't who you want to be." For a long moment, the only sound in the apartment was Walsh's heavy breathing. Then from outside came the voice of the elderly neighbor. "I've called 911, she announced from her doorway. "Told them an officer is threatening people with a gun. They're sending backup right now." Lisa saw the moment reality crashed back into Walsh's consciousness. He blinked rapidly, looking down at the gun in his hand as if surprised to find it there. Slowly, he lowered the weapon. "They wouldn't have believed you," he muttered, holstering his gun. "It would have been your word against mine." But Andre held up his phone, the video recording clearly visible on the screen. "Not anymore, officer." Walsh's face drained of color. Without another word, he turned and stormed out of the apartment, brushing past the neighbor who had likely saved the situation from becoming even worse. Lisa's legs nearly gave out as the adrenaline coursed through her. "System." She steadied herself against the wall, then keyed her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Nguyen. I need to report an incident involving Officer Walsh. He has left the scene and may be heading back to the station. He is armed and was just involved in a serious incident." Within minutes, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Lisa sat down with Tanisha, Andre, and Kevin, who had emerged from hiding and was now clinging to his mother. "I am so sorry," she told them. "What happened tonight was completely unacceptable. I need you to know that's not what our department stands for." Andre nodded slowly, still recording on his phone. "You gonna make sure something happens this time? Or will he just get another note in his file?" "I promise you," Lisa said, her voice firm with resolve. "This time will be different." As backup arrived in the apartment filled with officers, Lisa knew she was right. This time would be different. The video evidence, the witnesses, her own testimony. Walsh had finally crossed a line that couldn't be ignored or excused away. And though her hands still trembled slightly from the encounter, she felt a strange sense of clarity. The breaking point she'd sensed coming had arrived, forcing the department's long-simmering problems into the harsh light of day. Lisa sat in Captain Torres's office, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold between her hands. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the room. It had been 6 hours since Walsh had pointed his gun at her, and she still couldn't shake the image of the barrel aimed at her face. "Walk me through it again," Torres said, her pen poised over a notepad already filled with neat, precise writing. Her face was a careful mask of professionalism, but Lisa could see the anger simmering beneath the surface. Lisa took a deep breath and began the story for what felt like the 10th time that night. The domestic call, Walsh's aggressive approach, the escalation with Andre, the moment everything changed. "He said I needed to learn my place," Lisa repeated, her voice steadier now than it had been when she first reported the incident. He said I was undermining him by taking their side against my own. Those were his exact words. Torres nodded, making another note. And the gun was pointed directly at you for how long? Maybe 30 seconds, it felt like forever. Lisa set down the coffee cup, noticing the slight tremor in her hands had finally subsided. The neighbor called for backup, and that seemed to snap him out of it. That's when he lowered the weapon, and he left the scene before backup arrived? Yes, but he went straight to his car. I don't think he fled exactly. He just removed himself. Torres set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. For a moment, neither woman spoke. The weight of what had happened, an officer drawing his weapon on another officer, hung in the air between them. Walsh is in with internal affairs now, Torres said finally. He's claiming you interfered with his attempt to control a potentially violent suspect, that you put yourself between him and the boyfriend. Lisa felt a flare of anger. That's not what happened. He drew on me, not Andre. There are witnesses. The neighbor saw it, Tanisha and her son saw it, and Andre got it on video. At the mention of the video, Torres's expression changed. The video. Yes, that's why I wanted to talk to you privately before the official interviews begin. That video isn't just evidence in an internal investigation anymore. It's online. Lisa stared at her captain. What do you mean online? Torres turned her computer monitor so Lisa could see. On the screen was a social media page where Andre's video had been posted just 2 hours earlier. It already had thousands of views and hundreds of comments. The caption read, "Racist cop pulls gun on Asian female officer during domestic call. This is what happens when police try to de-escalate." Lisa watched the video play out from Andre's perspective, Walsh shoving her hand away, drawing his weapon, pointing it directly at her face. The audio was clear enough to catch Walsh's words about these people and Lisa needing to learn her place. The video ended with the neighbor announcing backup was on the way. It's everywhere, Torres said quietly. Local news has picked it up. It'll probably go national by morning. Lisa felt a strange sense of detachment watching herself on the screen, as if she were observing something that had happened to someone else. What happens now? Now it gets complicated, Torres replied. The department has placed Walsh on immediate administrative leave. The union's already involved. There will be a full investigation, but with the video evidence, well, this isn't going to be swept under the rug. It shouldn't be, Lisa said firmly. This isn't just about me. You've seen his record, the complaints from the community, the way he talks about minorities. How many times has he done something like this without a camera present? Torres nodded slowly. I know. Trust me, I know. I've been trying to clean up this department since I took over, but change is slow. Maybe this is the catalyst we needed, but... She hesitated. But what? But you need to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. The old guard will circle the wagons around Walsh. They'll paint you as inexperienced, say you panicked, claim you're pushing some political agenda. Are you ready for that? Lisa hadn't considered this aspect. She'd been so focused on the incident itself that she hadn't thought about how the department might react, how her fellow officers might view her role in bringing down one of their own. I didn't ask for this, she said after a moment. I was just doing my job. I know that, but not everyone will see it that way. Torres's phone buzzed with a message. She glanced at it and sighed. The chief wants to meet with us both in 20 minutes. The mayor's office is involved now too. As they left Torres's office, Lisa was acutely aware of the eyes following her through the station. Some officers nodded in solidarity, while others looked away, their expressions unreadable. The department's divisions were already becoming apparent. Officer, Tamika Johnson intercepted them in the hallway. Lisa, are you okay? I saw the video. I'm fine, Lisa assured her, though fine was far from how she felt. Just processing everything. The whole shift is talking about it, Tamika said, lowering her voice. People are taking sides already. Taking sides? Lisa echoed. There shouldn't be sides. He pointed his gun at another officer. Tamika's expression was grim. You'd think that would be clear-cut, wouldn't you? But Walsh has friends here. People who've worked with him for years, who owe him favors, who think like he does. They're saying you provoked him, that you disrespected his authority on the scene. Lisa felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. That's not what happened. I know that, Tamika said quickly. Anyone who's worked with Walsh knows what he's like. But this is bigger than just one incident now. This is about the culture of the entire department. Torres, who had been listening quietly, placed a hand on Lisa's shoulder. We need to go. The chief's waiting. As they walked to the elevator, Lisa's phone began buzzing with notifications, text messages from fellow officers, news alerts mentioning the incident, social media tags. The story was spreading like wildfire. The chief's office was on the top floor of the building, a space Lisa had only visited once before during her initial orientation. When they arrived, the outer office was already crowded. The department's legal counsel, the public information officer, and two people Lisa didn't recognize but assumed were from the mayor's office. The chief, a stern-faced woman in her late 50s who had risen through the ranks during an era when female officers were rare, gestured for Lisa and Torres to enter her private office. Officer Nguyen, the chief said once the door was closed. I've reviewed the video and the preliminary reports. I want to hear directly from you what happened tonight. Once again, Lisa recounted the events at the apartment. The chief listened without interruption, her expression giving away. Nothing. What Officer Walsh did was inexcusable, the chief said when Lisa had finished. I want to make that absolutely clear. Drawing a weapon on a fellow officer is grounds for immediate termination under normal circumstances. But these aren't normal circumstances, Torres added, sensing the unspoken qualifier. The chief sighed heavily. No, they're not. This incident has already become a media firestorm. The mayor's office is demanding action. Community leaders are calling for Walsh's badge and for a broader investigation into departmental practices. The union is threatening legal action if we don't follow exact procedures. She focused on Lisa. And you, Officer Nguyen, are suddenly at the center of it all. Lisa straightened in her chair. I understand the position this puts the department in, but I won't change my story or downplay what happened. I'm not asking you to, the chief replied. In fact, I'm asking the opposite. We need complete transparency here. The department is arranging a press conference for tomorrow morning. I'd like you to be present. The request caught Lisa off guard. You want me to speak to the press? Not necessarily speak, but be present. Show the public that we're taking this seriously, that we support the officer who tried to de-escalate the situation. The chief leaned forward. This could be a turning point for the department, Officer Nguyen, a chance to acknowledge past failures and commit to real change. Lisa wasn't naive enough to miss the political calculus at work. Having her, an Asian female officer, standing alongside the department leadership would send a powerful message about diversity and accountability. But she also recognized the opportunity to push for the changes she believed in. I'll be there, she agreed, but I have conditions. Both the chief and Torres looked surprised at her directness. What conditions? The chief asked. I want a commitment to reform the complaint review process. Walsh had dozens of complaints that were dismissed or downplayed. That can't happen anymore. Lisa spoke with a confidence that surprised even herself. And I want resources allocated for expanded de-escalation training, not just a single mandatory session, but ongoing programs. The chief studied her for a long moment. You're in a unique position of influence right now, Officer Nguyen. I respect that you're using it to push for positive change rather than personal gain. This isn't about me, Lisa said simply. It's about making sure what happened tonight doesn't happen again, to another officer or to a civilian. As the meeting concluded and they prepared to join the others in the outer office, Torres pulled Lisa aside. The next few days are going to be intense, she warned. Reporters will dig into your background. Walsh's supporters might try to intimidate you. Are you sure you're ready for this? Lisa thought of Kevin, the little boy who had witnessed the incident, how his eyes had widened in terror at the sight of Walsh's gun. She thought of Tanisha's bruised face, of Andre's controlled anger, of the elderly neighbor who had called for help. No, she admitted. I'm not ready, but it's necessary. When they opened the door, the buzz of conversation in the outer office immediately died. All eyes turned to Lisa, some supportive, others calculating, a few openly hostile. On a muted television in the corner, she could see helicopter footage of the apartment building, a news ticker running along the bottom of the screen with her name and Walsh's. The public information officer approached with a stack of printed statements. The press is already gathering downstairs. We've issued an initial statement, but they're demanding more details. Lisa's phone buzzed again, a text message from an unknown number. She opened it to find a single sentence. Thank you for standing up to him. It was from Tanisha. In that moment, despite the chaos swirling around her, Lisa felt a strange sense of clarity. What had begun as a routine domestic call had escalated into something that might actually change things. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with scrutiny and conflict. But for the first time since joining the force, Lisa felt like she was truly serving her community. All of her community. Let's get to work, she said. Morning light streamed through the blinds of Lisa's apartment as she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed her eyes after a night of fitful sleep. Her phone, resting on the counter, hadn't stopped buzzing with notifications since the video went viral. She'd eventually silenced it around 3 a.m., but sleep still wouldn't come. Today was the press conference. Today she would stand before cameras and microphones while the chief addressed what had happened. The thought made her stomach tighten. She reached for her uniform, then hesitated. Captain Torres had told her to wear civilian clothes. To humanize you, she'd said. Let them see the person behind the badge. Lisa chose a simple blue blouse and black pants instead. Her phone buzzed again with a text from Tamika. Heads up. News vans are outside the station. Come in through the back entrance. The investigation was officially 1 day old, and already it felt like her life had been turned upside down. The department's press room was packed when Lisa arrived. Reporters filled every seat. Camera operators lined the walls, and the chief stood at a podium looking grim but composed. Captain Torres intercepted Lisa at the door. You ready for this? She asked quietly. Lisa nodded, though ready was the last thing she felt. Any word on Walsh? Still suspended. His lawyers already making statements to the press about your inexperience and political agenda. Torres's expression hardened. Don't let it get to you. The video speaks for itself. The chief gestured for them to join her at the podium. As Lisa took her place slightly behind the chief, the room fell silent. Dozens of cameras focusing on her face. Yesterday evening, the chief began, an incident occurred that violated the core values of our department and the oath that every officer takes to protect and serve. Officer Robert Walsh, a 15-year veteran, drew his weapon and pointed it at a fellow officer during a domestic disturbance call. The room erupted with questions, but the chief raised her hand for silence. We have placed Officer Walsh on administrative leave, pending a full investigation by Internal Affairs and the District Attorney's Office. We are committed to complete transparency throughout this process. She turned slightly. With me today is Officer Lisa Nguyen, who demonstrated remarkable composure during this incident, and Captain Elena Torres, who oversees the division. A reporter called out, Officer Nguyen, did you fear for your life when Walsh pointed his gun at you? Before Lisa could respond, the chief intervened. Officer Nguyen is not taking questions at this time. She will be providing her full account to investigators. Another voice from the back. Is it true Walsh has had multiple complaints of racial bias before this incident? The chief hesitated just long enough for Torres to step forward. There is a documented history of civilian complaints against Officer Walsh. Part of our investigation will include a comprehensive review of how those complaints were handled. The questions continued for 20 minutes, about Walsh's history, about department policies, about what disciplinary measures might be taken. Lisa stood silently, acutely aware of the cameras capturing her every expression. Finally, the chief concluded the press conference with a promise of regular updates as the investigation progressed. As they exited the room, an aide hurried up to them. "Chief, there's something you need to see," he said urgently. "More videos are coming in." In the chief's office, they gathered around a computer screen as the aide pulled up a series of video clips. The first was dashboard camera footage from another patrol car that had responded to the domestic call. It showed Walsh storming out of the apartment building, his face contorted with rage. The second clip came from a body camera, Officer Peterson's, who had been Walsh's friend and frequent patrol partner. It showed a conversation between the two men a week earlier discussing Lisa. "That Nguyen girl thinks she knows everything." Walsh's voice came through clearly. "Coming in here with her community policing nonsense. Like these people respect anything but force." Peterson's chuckle was audible from behind the camera. "The diversity hires are always the worst, trying to prove something." Lisa felt her face flush with anger, but she kept her expression neutral as the chief and Torres exchanged glances. "There's more," the aide said. "Officers have been coming forward since the video went public. We've received statements from 6 different officers about previous incidents involving Walsh. Racial comments, excessive force, intimidation of fellow officers who reported concerns." "Why now?" Lisa asked, breaking her silence. "Why didn't they speak up before?" "Fear," Torres said simply. "Fear of retaliation, of being ostracized, of facing the same treatment you're experiencing now." The chief rubbed her temples. "This is bigger than one incident. This is systemic." She looked at Lisa. "The investigation just got a lot more complicated." Over the next week, Lisa spent hours in meetings with internal affairs investigators, recounting every detail of the incident and her previous interactions with Walsh. The questioning was exhaustive, sometimes verging on hostile. "Why did you feel it necessary to contradict Officer Walsh's approach to the suspect?" one investigator asked, his tone suggesting she had been in the wrong. "Because his approach was escalating the situation unnecessarily," Lisa replied evenly. "Andre Wilson wasn't a threat until Walsh made him one." "So you admit you undermined a senior officer's authority?" Lisa leaned forward. "I attempted to de-escalate a tense situation, which is what we're trained to do. Officer Walsh chose to respond by drawing his weapon on a fellow officer. Those are the facts." Outside the investigation rooms, the department was in turmoil. Officers had visibly split into camps, those who supported Lisa and the investigation and those who stood by Walsh, arguing he was being railroaded for political reasons. The tension was palpable in the hallways, the break room, the locker rooms. One morning, Lisa arrived at her locker to find the word snitch scrawled across it in marker. That afternoon, she found a small blue ribbon pinned to her desk. A silent show of support from someone who didn't feel safe speaking out publicly. "It's like the department is at war with itself," Tamika commented as they ate lunch together in Tamika's car, avoiding the charged atmosphere of the station. "People who've worked together for years aren't speaking." "I never wanted this," Lisa said, pushing her sandwich away untouched. "I just wanted to do the job right." "You did," Tamika assured her, "and what's happening now needed to happen. Walsh isn't the only problem officer in the department." Lisa's phone buzzed with a text from Captain Torres. "IA wants to see you again. New evidence." The head of internal affairs, a stern woman named Detective Rivera, was waiting with Torres when Lisa arrived. On the table between them was a thick folder. "We've been reviewing Officer Walsh's personnel file," Rivera explained, "including complaints that were officially dismissed or marked as unfounded. The pattern is troubling." She opened the folder to reveal dozens of civilian complaints spanning Walsh's 15-year career. Excessive force, racial profiling, verbal abuse. Most had been filed by people of color from the neighborhoods Walsh patrolled. Almost none of these resulted in disciplinary action, Rivera continued. The few that did were minor, verbal warnings, additional training that was never completed. Torres's expression was tight with anger. The system protected him. Investigation after investigation concluded there was insufficient evidence or no corroborating witnesses. Until now, Rivera added, the video changed everything, and not just the video from the apartment. We've received footage from other incidents, testimony from other officers. Once the dam broke, Lisa flipped through the complaints, each one representing someone who had tried to speak up about Walsh and been ignored or dismissed. How many other officers have files like this? The silence that followed was answer enough. We're expanding the investigation, Rivera said finally. Looking at the supervisors who dismissed these complaints, the field training officers who worked with Walsh, the partner assignments to see if certain officers were consistently paired with problem cops. And Walsh himself? Lisa asked. The district attorney is reviewing the case for potential criminal charges. Torres replied. Assault with a deadly weapon, civil rights violations. His lawyer is already talking plea deals. Lisa closed the folder, feeling the weight of all those ignored voices. What about the people who filed these complaints? Don't they deserve to know they were right all along? Rivera and Torres exchanged looks. That's complicated, Rivera began. It shouldn't be, Lisa insisted. The department failed them. Repeatedly. We should acknowledge that publicly. The legal team is concerned about liability, Torres explained. If we admit the department knew about Walsh's behavior and did nothing, then we'd be telling the truth, Lisa finished. Isn't that what this investigation is supposed to be about? That evening, Lisa visited the apartment building where the incident had occurred. She found Tanisha and Andre sitting on the front steps, watching Kevin play with neighborhood children in the small patch of grass nearby. Officer Nguyen, Andre greeted her, surprised. Didn't expect to see you back here. I'm not here officially, Lisa explained. I just wanted to check on you all and to thank you. Thank us? Tanisha asked. For the video. For being willing to come forward. Not everyone would have done that. Andre shrugged. Seemed like you were the only one trying to do right by us that night. When Walsh pulled that gun on you, man, I couldn't believe it. If he'd do that to another cop, what would he do to someone like me? That's why I'm here, Lisa said. The investigation is looking at other complaints against Walsh now. Years of them. Your video helped break through a wall of silence. Tanisha glanced at Kevin, then back to Lisa. Will it actually change anything? Or just this one officer? It was the question Lisa had been asking herself for days. I don't know, she admitted. But I'm going to try to make sure it does. As she walked back to her car, Lisa noticed a small gathering at the community center across the street. Through the windows, she could see community members seated in a circle, some holding signs. One read, Police Accountability Now. The neighborhood was organizing, finding its voice. The investigation had expanded beyond Walsh, beyond Lisa, beyond even the department itself. It had become about a system that had failed the very people it was meant to protect, both the civilians who suffered under biased policing and the good officers trying to serve honorably. Lisa's phone buzzed with a message from Captain Torres. DA wants to meet tomorrow, bringing formal charges against Walsh. It was a start, not an ending but a beginning. As Lisa drove away, she felt something she hadn't experienced since the night of the incident. A cautious sense of hope that real change might actually be possible. 2 weeks after the incident, Lisa sat in a conference room at the district attorney's office surrounded by legal pads and coffee cups. The formal charges against Officer Walsh had been filed yesterday. Assault with a deadly weapon, criminal threatening, civil rights violations, and misconduct in office. His lawyer was already pushing for a plea deal. He'll lose his badge. Either way, the assistant district attorney explained, a young woman with tired eyes and a determined expression. But a plea might keep him out of jail. What do you think will happen? Lisa asked. The ADA tapped her pen against her notepad. With the video evidence, he'll take the plea. No jury would acquit him after seeing that footage. She paused. The bigger question is what happens to the department now. It was the question on everyone's mind. In the 2 weeks since the video had gone viral, the case had grown far beyond one officer pointing a gun at another. The mayor had ordered an independent review of the police department's complaint process and disciplinary procedures. The state attorney general's office had opened an investigation into potential pattern and practice violations. Community groups, We're demanding oversight committees with actual power. Officer Nguyen? The ADA's voice pulled Lisa from her thoughts. You'll need to testify before the grand jury tomorrow, but it should be straightforward. Just tell them exactly what happened. As Lisa left the DA's office, her phone buzzed with a text from Captain Torres. Chief wants to see you. 3 p.m. The Chief's office felt different now. Less intimidating than it had that first night, but more weighted with significance. Lisa had been here almost daily since the investigation began, watching as the case expanded like ripples in a pond. Today, the chief wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit sat in one of the visitor chairs, the city's attorney, Lisa realized. Officer Nguyen, the chief gestured for her to sit. Mr. Daniels is here to discuss a sensitive matter. The attorney cleared his throat. Officer, Walsh's legal team has made an unusual request as part of plea negotiations. They want a joint statement from the department and from you personally. Lisa frowned. What kind of statement? They want you to say that while Walsh's actions were inappropriate, you understand they were the result of stress and poor training rather than racial bias. Lisa stared at him in disbelief. You can't be serious. It would help the city avoid a lengthy trial and potentially years of appeals, the attorney explained, not meeting her eyes. And it would give us more leverage to demand his permanent surrender of his law enforcement certification. So I'm supposed to lie? Lisa's voice rose slightly. Pretend he didn't call me and Andre these people? Ignore all the racist complaints? In his file? Help whitewash what actually happened? The chief held up a hand. No one is asking you to lie, Officer Nguyen. But there are political realities we need to consider. Political realities, Lisa repeated slowly, like the fact that admitting we had a racist officer on the force for 15 years might make the department look bad, or that it might give more ammunition to the community groups demanding oversight. The attorney shifted uncomfortably. There are liability concerns. There are truth concerns, Lisa cut him off. Walsh didn't point his gun at me because he was stressed. He did it because I challenged his authority to mistreat people of color. He did it because the department had spent years teaching him there would be no consequences for his actions. A heavy silence filled the room. Finally, the chief spoke. You're right. She turned to the attorney. Tell Walsh's lawyer the deal is off the table. We're not helping him hide from what he did. After the attorney left, the chief studied Lisa with a thoughtful expression. You know, when this all started, I was worried you weren't ready for the spotlight. I was wrong. I'm still not sure I am, Lisa admitted. But I'm ready to do what's right. The department was changing, not overnight and not without resistance, but the transformation was unmistakable. In the squad room the next morning, Lisa noticed new posters outlining the revised complaint procedure, now managed by an independent review board rather than internal affairs alone. A training schedule on the bulletin board highlighted mandatory sessions on de-escalation, implicit bias, and community policing. Officer Nguyen. Lisa turned to find Officer Peterson, Walsh's friend and former partner, standing awkwardly nearby. The last time they'd spoken had been before the incident. Since then, Peterson had been conspicuously quiet, neither supporting Lisa nor defending Walsh publicly. Do you have a minute? He asked, glancing around the room. They stepped into an empty interview room. Peterson closed the door and took a deep breath. I owe you an apology, he said, the words coming out in a rush. What Walsh did was wrong. And the things I said about you on that body cam footage, that was wrong too. Lisa studied him, trying to gauge his sincerity. Why are you telling me this now? Peterson looked down. Because I've been part of the problem. When I first joined, I thought Walsh was just tough, old school. I convinced myself his methods were effective. He paused. But looking back at all those complaints, all those incidents I witnessed and said nothing about, I can't do it anymore. What changed? Lisa asked. My daughter, Peterson said quietly. She's 7. She saw the video of Walsh pointing his gun at you. At school, they talked about it in her class, about standing up when you see something wrong. She asked me if I would have helped you. His voice caught. I couldn't tell her the truth. It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase the years Peterson had spent enabling Walsh and officers like him, but it was a start. Another small ripple in the expanding circle of change. What happens now? She asked. I've asked for a transfer to community outreach, Peterson said. I have a lot to learn, and a lot to make up for. 3 days later, Lisa returned to the neighborhood where it had all happened. The community center was hosting a town hall meeting between residents and police department representatives. Captain Torres had asked Lisa to attend. The center's multi-purpose room was packed. Residents filled every chair, with more standing along the walls. At the front, Torres and several other officers, including Tamika, sat behind a long table. The tension in the room was palpable. As Lisa made her way to the front, she spotted familiar faces, Tanisha and Andre with little Kevin between them, the elderly neighbor who had called 911 that night, other residents she'd met on patrol. Torres welcomed everyone, then addressed the elephant in the room directly. We're here because trust has been broken, not just by one incident, but by years of patterns that we failed to address. We can't fix that with one meeting, but we can start the conversation. For the next 2 hours, residents spoke about harassment they'd experienced, about calls for help that went unanswered, about the fear they felt when seeing police in their neighborhood. The officers mostly listened, sometimes asking questions, occasionally offering explanations, but never excuses. When it was Lisa's turn to speak, she stood and faced the community. 2 weeks ago, I experienced firsthand what many of you have been telling us for years, that there are officers who abuse their power, who let bias guide their actions, who see the badge as a shield from consequences. I'm sorry it took something so dramatic for many of us to finally listen. She paused, looking around the room. Officer Walsh lost his job and he'll never work in law enforcement again. But that's just one officer. The real work is changing the system that protected him for so long. That's not something the department can do alone. We need your voices, your oversight, your willingness to keep holding us accountable. After the meeting, as people mingled over coffee and cookies, Lisa found herself approached by a young black woman she didn't recognize. I wanted to thank you, the woman said. My brother was arrested by Officer Walsh 2 years ago. He filed a complaint about how he was treated, but nothing ever came of it. I'm sorry, Lisa said, and meant it. The system failed him. Yes, it did. But maybe it won't fail the next person. The woman smiled slightly. He's thinking about becoming a police officer himself now. Says they need people who understand what it's like on both sides. 6 months after Walsh pointed his gun at Lisa, the changes in the department had taken root. The independent review board was fully operational, with civilian members from every neighborhood in the city. Body cameras were now mandatory for all officers on duty. The training program had been completely overhauled, with experienced officers, like Tamika leading sessions on community engagement, and Lisa had a new role, heading up a cadet mentorship program designed to support officers from underrepresented backgrounds through their first years on the force. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the classroom as Lisa prepared for the day's session. 20 cadets would be arriving soon, a diverse group that looked more like the city they would serve than any previous class. On her desk sat a framed newspaper article, not the one about the incident itself, but a follow-up story published 1 month later. The headline read, Police Department Begins Systemic Reforms Following Officer Misconduct. It wasn't a perfect headline. Misconduct seemed too mild a word for what Walsh had done, but the article itself told the full story, acknowledging both the department's failures and its efforts to change. Captain Torres appeared in the doorway. Ready for your first class as instructor? Lisa smiled. As ready as I'll ever be. Torres handed her a folder. The final report from the AG's office. Thought you'd want to see it. The report detailed all the findings from the state investigation, the pattern of ignored complaints, the lack of accountability, the culture that had protected problem officers. But it also acknowledged the reforms that were now underway, holding up the department as a potential model for others. We've still got a long way to go, Torres said, echoing Lisa's thoughts. Yes, Lisa agreed, but at least we're finally heading in the right direction. Outside, she could hear the cadets arriving, their voices filling the hallway with energy and purpose. Among them were the future of policing, officers who would carry forward the lessons learned from one terrible moment when a racist officer pointed a gun at a fellow officer and, in doing so, finally forced a reckoning that was long overdue. Lisa tucked the report away and went to greet her class. The real work was just beginning.